Mysticism, a very long and fascinating word. We've received many responses on this topic, and please keep on calling. The number will appear on the screen. So continue to call and write and comment. We receive a lot of feedback on the topic of mysticism, and today we'll discuss the topic. You know what? Dim the lights, light a couple of candles, and listen up, because today we're going to talk about reincarnation. We'll hear a very interesting angle from Rabbi Ben Porat. Hello, Rabbi.
Good evening.
From Jerusalem.
Yes, the holy city.
So maybe, Rabbi Ben Porat, a few words about your background. That will help us later understand some things. Your background is post-World War II and the Holocaust. Was your family Haredi, religious?
Not ultra-Orthodox, not ultra-Orthodox. A religious family that always stayed religious. I was even the founder of a national religious school in Bat Yam. Our family then went to the Negev for a while, where we lived in Ofakim.
Ben Gurion's vision.
Where we lived in Ofakim for a few years. We lived there from 1978 till 1982. Conducted activities inside the city, in the communities around it, including the Air Force Base Chatzerim. Then we built our School of Higher Education in Ofakim, that's still thriving today. It's one of the most acclaimed schools in the world, and not just in Israel. And after that, we returned to Jerusalem, established a foundation for new immigrants.
Yeah.
Then we established an intensive school for Hebrew to accommodate the wave of new immigrants that arrived in the beginning of the 90s. This was the first school of its kind in the country that's not affiliated with any government institution or the Jewish Agency.
All this is very nice, Rabbi, and it gives us a basic understanding of who you are and what your background is. Our audience today, mysticism is very much in fashion. People yearn for spirituality. And Judaism undoubtedly, and we'll soon hear how much, is a vocal instrument rich with timeless spirituality and especially mysticism. And I wanted to ask, I'm interested in knowing, before we ask the really frightening questions, why are people so interested in reincarnation? Why does it do it for us?
Yeah, that's not a question. The question should be constructed in reverse. You should ask, why are there people who are not interested in this yet?
But anyway...
Reincarnation is the most important question of them all, because it gives us answers to who we are. It answers the questions, who am I, what am I, why am I here? It's less interesting to know what I was in the past life, more interesting to understand what I'm supposed to do in this lifetime. Does man have any more important question than who he is, what he's here for, what purpose he has on the face of the earth? Therefore, I'm astonished by those who don't ask that question. Every serious person who sits down and thinks about it for a couple of minutes will very easily come to ask this question. Well, wait a minute. Do you know why you came into the world? Why? What for? I know. There, idiots will say, so what? You came, you went, you fell, you got up, you were born, you'll die. No.
I have an ID number, have the IDF number.
Yes.
What difference does it make where I come from?
Yeah, dogs in the street also have numbers, and so do cars and bicycles. What does that mean? Doesn't tell you anything. You see a number on a bus. Does that tell you where it's going? See a car's license plate. It doesn't tell you who the owner is. It doesn't tell you anything at all. Just because it doesn't give it any meaning, question still remains. Who are you?
Okay.
Woe to numbers. Sick people have today become numbers in hospitals. Everyone's numbered. The man disappears.
Yeah, there was once also...
This question about reincarnation is directed towards man. Man asks himself that question. So, heretics and atheists don't have those kinds of questions because coincidence doesn't prompt any questions. Now, 2, those who believe in fate and luck have a question, but it's less significant because in any case they believe the deal is closed and whatever happens will happen and it isn't subject to change. But even a man who has the most basic and elementary element of faith believes there's a God in the world. Einstein said in a famous letter from 1933, Einstein, who was a complete atheist, reached religion through science. He arrived at a state of complete faith after he concluded that nothing is coincidental. God's not playing dice, he said in response to Eisenberg's theory of uncertainty.
And this after many years when he was an adamant atheist.
Yes. And he said in that same letter that every soul came down to the world for some reason. The mystery is, for what purpose? But it's clear that there is a reason. Every person who has minimal faith understands that there's a God. Just like every factory manager knows every worker has a value, has a purpose as to why he's there. Every military commander knows the reason why there's such and such amount of people in his unit, and that every one of them has a job to do. Nobody would ever say there's no reason for the soldiers, or in that factory there are 235 workers for no purpose. There's no such thing as for no reason. Everybody has a job to do. Everybody's got a purpose. Those that aren't needed are sent away. Would anybody think that the world is just turning for no reason? No.
So it's not the numbers, and there's a value to every worker. And it was discussed already by Plato and Aristotle, and beforehand, and it stems from Judaism.
Yeah, it's true. The concept of reincarnation exists in all the ancient cultures from the Far East to Greece. And Pythagoras even claimed he knew what he was in previous lives. Reincarnation appears in the Kabbalah, and from there it spread via the Kabbalah teachings of the Holy Ari about 500 years ago. That's when it began to get more disclosure among the different segments of the nation.
So it began to spread and
Yeah, exactly.
You mean it already existed beforehand, but it started to spread at the time of the Ari HaKadosh and
precisely.
Tzfat. I still have a question. So what if I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this world? So what difference does it make to me as a person? Okay. So you're saying that there's the things that I need, but still I can enjoy myself and have a great life. What is the...
Let me give you an allegorical example. Let's say some factory manager sends his worker to deposit checks for him in the bank. The worker arrives at the bank. He's tired and sweating from the journey. The bank has air conditioning. There's some magazines, newspapers lying on the table. 1 o'clock, he's told, "Sir, we're closing the bank. You have to leave." The worker leaves and returns to the factory. The boss asks him for the receipts, and the worker says, "Wow, sorry, I forgot." So the boss asks him what it is exactly he did over there. The worker's reply is, "Well, first I was tired. They had a couch. I met a couple of interesting friends. We spoke. We exchanged stories, experiences. And then we left and went to a restaurant, and then we went back to the bank." The boss interrupts him and asks, Then what did you go for?"
And the moral?
If a soul descends to the world in order to repair itself to a certain extent, meaning the point of the soul descending into the body is only so that it can exit the body improved and enhanced. Just like a person goes to school to gain an education, or a person goes to a gym to get stronger, or to a special military unit to gain expertise, the soul arrives here for a specific reason, and it only remains here for that reason.
Uh-huh.
And therefore, if it doesn't pay attention to the subject, it harms itself. It causes harm in 2 ways. A, it won't reach perfection, and B, it can cause itself damage.
It didn't deposit the checks, it only passed...
It could be even worse than that.
What does that mean?
It could rip up the checks, or could lose the checks.
So it's damage, not just a waste of time.
That's right. Yeah, it could also destroy itself.
So I wanted to ask, so what's the big deal? So we'll reincarnate again. Amusement parks, roller coasters, somersaults, fun.
Listen.
Is all this
The
complicated?
soul doesn't want to descend into the body. We're sitting here, we think the greatest thing in the world is to be in here, our bodies. The body doesn't want to descend, and the soul doesn't want to descend into the body. It's forced to descend. The soul wants to remain in the spiritual world, and each descent into the body is a nightmare. It's a nightmare to the soul that's spiritual by definition. It doesn't want to be here. This can be compared to a person who needs to do some kind of demeaning job to make ends meet. He doesn't want to do it, but he has no choice. He's forced to do it or he won't be able to make a living, so he's happy to finish it as soon as he can. Tell me, are there any students that want to be in a grade behind in school? Is there anybody who wants to do 3rd or 10th grade twice? No way. They'll turn the world upside down to avoid that. They'll take private lessons, whatever it takes.
The principle is clear. Bottom line, can we prove that there is reincarnation? I mean, like people say, it's just talk. Do we have tools?
There are ways to prove it. Listen, our rabbi, the Holy Ari, was an unknown when he arrived in Safed. He came from Egypt, and first people didn't really believe him. But he proved himself with signs and with wonders. He'd give someone's name, describe the way that person was 30, 50 years earlier. He'd relate the person's likes and dislikes and name the different villages the person had lived in. People went and investigated his claims because he had arrived alone without any public backing. They checked out his claims in history and discovered that they were true. Now back to us. The American academic Professor Stevenson wrote many books on this topic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of literature on the subject throughout the world. It's being investigated by many academic bodies. They put people into a hypnotic state, and the people then relate specific information, and then they go and they investigate what it was they said. And under hypnosis, they relate stories and facts from 10, 20, 100, 50 years earlier that they were previously
From
unknown.
previous lives. Yeah.
Yes, nobody had any prior information about what the people were saying under hypnosis. After research and investigation, checking archives in the places mentioned, they verify the stories as correct, such as 200 years ago such and such a street was named such and such, or that such and such a boat was called such and such. No one was aware of these things beforehand. No, these stories weren't make-believe. Our sage, Rabbi Chaim Vital, wrote at the beginning of his book, Shari Kedusha, that an introduction to all of the Ari's Kabbalah works, scientists know that man is not body. The body is just a costume. It's a costume that the soul wears here for a certain period of time in order to fulfill its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But upon completing its job, it puts the body, which is just a piece of clothing, into the closet. When you get home, you put your good clothes in the closet. The soul also wears good clothes.
What's that? Spiritual clothes, and the body is
Spiritual
stored
clothes.
there in the closet. There.
Therefore, the body is a means to conduct work for 60, 70, 80 years in the world. And all the souls were created on the first day of creation, immediately on the first day. All the souls were created on the first day of creation, immediately, the first day. And they're situated in a specific world called a room. Every soul has its own time for descent. When it's time for it to descend, clothes are ordered in the womb of a specific woman.
A suit?
Correct. Why is it called a womb? It's like a factory.
Ah, nice.
And the shape and the size of the organs is according to the shape of the soul. Every soul has its own shape. The shape of each and every person is the shape of the soul, not of the body.
So the soul has the shape of the suit.
Correct.
And the suit is custom made, you mean?
Yes. And it expresses itself the most in the face. If you look at other creatures, say cows, for example, they have similar faces. Even their owners can't recognize them.
Or fish.
Now check this out. How many people are there in the world today? 6, 7 billion? No two people the same. Even twins that look identical, their mothers can tell them apart. They're almost the same, but not identical.
So that means that the souls are different one from another. That explains the difference of opinions.
Exactly. When the soul descends into a particular body, it needs to fulfill that certain role. That's the nature of man in the world. When a man goes in the factory, he wears work clothes. If he goes skiing, he wears a skiing outfit. If he goes diving in the ocean, he wears a diving suit. He flies in a plane, he wears a pilot's uniform, correct?
Yeah.
He fixes the electricity, uses electrical tools.
Yes.
He fixes the plumbing system, he uses plumbing tools, and so on. A person uses the right tools for the right job. In one reincarnation, a soul will descend into a wealthy home, and the man will grow up in a world of riches. Why is that? So that the soul can attain purification and fix its flaws, which is what it was sent here for.
Uh-huh.
Through the trials of staying honest and modest within a world of riches. And in another reincarnation, it's supposed to play the role of a poor person. It'll descend down to the world, enter into a poor family's home. It'll endure a difficult life, and it's supposed to, so that it can repair itself by, despite all the hardships, persevering and rising up. A soul's descent is just like the way a diamond needs to be polished from every angle to get its contour. Yeah, it's possible in a certain case. It didn't do its job well, and then it needs the second semester. It needs to come down again to fix what it didn't fix the time
before. And that we said the soul doesn't like so much.
No, not at all. Nobody would like that.
So how can I know? How can a man... So somebody watching the show says, indeed, there is a purpose. So now what do? Call a rabbi? How does it work?
The Vilna Gaon writes that there were many people, many prophets in Israel in the past, from the Exodus from Egypt until the end of the Second Temple period. There were prophets. In the Talmud, in Tractate Megillah, it's written there were 600,000 male prophets, 600,000 female prophets during that time.
Inflation.
That period lasted about 1,100 years. It's about 1,200,000 prophets, divided equally in male and female prophets.
So back then you'd call the 1-800 prophet and ask what to do?
The Vilna Gaon asked why they needed so many prophets, because only 48 prophets were mentioned in the Bible. In the Talmud it says those prophets mentioned were the ones that prophesied the future. Here's another example. Saul, before he became king, he lost his donkeys. Went to the prophet Samuel and asked him.
Yeah.
He asked him where they were. Hence the expression, he went looking
for
donkeys, and he found the kingdom.
And found the kingdom.
The Vilna Gaon said, back then, a person would ask a prophet why he had come into the world, what he needed to do. The prophet would ask God, what is this man, Reuven ben Leah, supposed to be doing? And God would say that his job is such and such. So, just like a family doctor knows a patient's case, there the prophet would ask God, because only God knows.
So that was a period of 1,000 and somewhat years. And today, nowadays...
True, there's no more prophecy in Israel since the destruction of the Second Temple.
So what do?
We haven't had the means to get this precise data on what we're supposed to be doing and how to act to achieve it. We can only pray to God and hope that we'll reach purification. What's man's main job? Do you know? To do what he finds most difficult. We live in a world where man says, accept me like this, accept me for who I am. This I can't do.
Go with the flow.
Yeah, I tried. I wasn't built for this. Yeah, I've tried. The most basic thing, like so-and-so can't quit smoking, and so-and-so can't stop eating, this one can't help being jealous, that one has a problem with hatred, and they say, it's impossible, I can't give up these things. The Vilna Gaon says that's precisely what you need to do. And apparently the Vilna Gaon failed in a past life.
He ate chocolate.
So his soul descended to repair itself. When an injured person arrives in the hospital, they treat the leg that hurts or the hand that hurts, because that's what was injured in the accident. The patient doesn't say, doctor, don't touch where it hurts. Don't tend to the wound. I'll tell you an interesting story. Once, a woman came up to me after a lecture and asked me if I remembered her or if I knew her. Did I remember? Did I know her? I told her that I didn't. She said she had heard me give a lecture 7 years earlier in the Jerusalem neighborhood of Kiryat Yovel. I have to tell you, you saved my life in that lecture. I asked her how. She told me her story. She's all alone. She doesn't have any parents, any brothers or sisters, has no husband, no children. She used to work in a hospital, in a ward for the terminally ill. Very difficult ward to work in. All the patients that enter that ward, they leave straight to the cemetery. Nobody comes out alive. She only saw sorrow. She was like the living dead. She didn't feel anything. There are those that live for their children, those live for their own enjoyment. But she had no happiness in her life. There are nurses that work in the birthing wards that help women give birth. They bring children into the world. There are those who work in the orthopedic ward. Someone goes in crippled, he walks out in one piece. People enter the cardiology ward, almost dead, and they leave alive. That's job satisfaction. That's happiness. She didn't have any of that. People come in through one door and they leave through another.
And what happened to her?
She was overwhelmed with depression, decided to commit suicide.
Oy, oy, oy.
She thought that no one's going to be sad if she died, because she didn't have any friends or family, and she didn't have anything to live for or anything to fear of dying. She decided she'll take her own life, commit suicide. And she told me that at that point she suddenly remembered the lecture that I had given. She recalled, I said, a person who kills himself is comparable to a soldier going AWOL. A person drafted by the army goes AWOL. What happens to him? The army looks for him. Eventually they find him, track him down, they bring him to trial. He goes to jail for a couple of years. He finishes his 2-year prison sentence. He still has to complete his army service. The jail time didn't replace his army service. First of all, finish the jail sentence, then go complete the army service. Suddenly she remembered that, and she thought if she commits suicide, then that's escape. Where will she run to? Because anyway she'll be sent back here in another year or 20 years of the next life to mend what she failed to do this time around.
What a punishment.
It's better to finish it all in one go. She told me I didn't know then that I was responsible for her living many more years. Therefore, reincarnation changes a person's entire perspective on life. You asked me at the beginning, what does it matter why a soul comes and goes? It changes our whole mentality.
So we mentioned beforehand how King Saul went looking for donkeys and found a kingdom. I came to hear about mysticism, and I found a lot to ponder. I invite the viewers to call us. The phone number appears on the screen below. I'd also like to suggest we also have written material on this topic written by the rabbi and other things. We also have computer CDs, and you're invited to call us, to contact us. And you can also receive information on timetables for lectures on this topic and on others as well. We will meet with the rabbi for an additional half hour shortly, and then he will answer your questions as well. Here we are again. Shalom, Rabbi Ben Porat.
Hello.
So we've received a lot of responses, and we'll shortly look at some of the questions. The day is short and the task is abundant. For those who are joining us now, the show runs consecutively, so for those who didn't see the first show, we presented the topic of reincarnation. We've discussed mysticism. We received a lot of responses. People want to hear more. We will try to focus on reincarnation. So why don't we go straight to the first question? And we'll see, someone asked, why does one soul descend into a body that suffers in this world, while the other descends into a body that enjoys itself physically or spiritually? We discussed this in the previous show, and they add here that some are born healthy and some are born good-looking, while others are not. So why the differences in reincarnation?
Each soul goes through a variety of different roles and a variety of different possibilities in order to perfect itself to the optimum. The Arizal has another explanation as follows. One of the most frequent questions, one of the most difficult philosophic questions is, how come some righteous people often suffer and evil people often have it good? There's an explanation in the Talmud. The righteous person who suffers could be the son of an evil man. And an evil man that has it good could be the son of a righteous man. The answer in the books is as follows. A son is a son of himself. Meaning that a person might be righteous in this lifetime, but in the previous life was an evil person. He descends to this world in order to pay for the sins committed in his past life and to lighten his punishment. A soul that's paying his dues now is the same soul from then in a different body now. A different family, a different state, but it's irrelevant. He has the same file. The number has stayed the same, like a digital ID number. Our sage, the Holy Ari, says...
So that means that the soul remains, only the body changes according to the needs.
Everyone's familiar with the big question, why 1 million little children were killed in the Holocaust. But that's not the first Holocaust we've gone through. Many more Jews were killed during the destruction of the Second Temple by Titus than in the Holocaust. Millions and millions were brutally killed by Nebuchadnezzar when he destroyed the First Temple. The Holy Ari writes, whoever has read the Bible knows that at that time, people were mostly idol worshippers. The majority of the kings of Israel and Judah were originally idol worshippers. And what happened to most of them? They died peacefully in their sleep. They didn't go through some kind of punishment. And the Holy Ari writes that when the time came for the destruction of the temple, those same souls from 100, 200, 300, 600 years earlier descended into children's bodies. So at the age of 1, 2, 3 years old, they're already old-timers.
That means that a soul that leaves this world does not necessarily reincarnate immediately to another body.
No. There could be a break of 1,
and when it's
50,
time, according
or
to
800
calculations,
years.
I see.
Correct. Then those souls, according to the Holy Ari, descend into this world. The same little children who were brutally murdered when the First and Second Temple were destroyed, the same souls that sinned in a previous life. So the biggest of all questions, a righteous man that suffers and an evil man who has it good, is answered in the most complete and real way through reincarnation teachings. That's why it's called the true Torah, Torah of truth.
It's not sons suffering from the sins of the fathers, but the evil man was a righteous man in a past life.
It's the father's
Same
son
soul.
because he's a result of himself.
The calculations are continuous and the tikkun must be done. Our next question is, what happens to a soul that doesn't do it?
If it doesn't purify itself now, or even worse, if it ruined and destroyed itself, it'll need to descend again. But before that, it goes to Gehinnom. This is a vague concept that people don't usually comprehend correctly. I'll explain. Gehinnom, or hell, it's comparable to a hospital for the body or a garage for the car. A car gets damaged in an accident, so it's taken to a garage where it's opened up and inspected and fixed up. It gets hot or cold or burned, but eventually it gets repaired. What happens in a hospital? Hospitals can seem like a most cruel place. People are cut open, but for what purpose?
There's a purpose.
So that they can be healthier. They arrive there, injured, and they're caused pain and cut open. But the hospital's objective is to make them better. Gehinnom, or hell, it's the same thing for the soul. There are things that hurt the soul in this world, and that can be healed by a maneuver, a technique called Gehinnom. Of course the soul suffers. It suffers very much. But that same suffering is designed to fix flaws that the soul sustained during its life. There are flaws that it sustained that can't be fixed here. That's what purification is. Gehinnom can't carry out the positive action of purification. Purification is comparable to physiotherapy administered after the hospital. The hospital can fix a broken leg, but in order for that leg to be able to walk again, it needs physiotherapy. Then after Gehinnom,
I understand. So,
the soul descends again.
Yeah.
Because it needs to now recharge its battery with good deeds and improve so that it can go back up. People don't descend for the sake of this world, but for the sake of the world to come. The whole process of the soul descending into the body is so it can improve itself, so it can live for eternity in a better condition in the next world.
We simply have a lot of questions. The rabbi has often used the term suits. So the question is, a soul that descends several times into different bodies, why is that? And I also want to add another question. Is there a connection between souls that reincarnate together and familial ties or matrimonial ties or even neighborly ties? Could there be a connection to previous lives? The two souls will descend into new suits and rendezvous together.
It's a very complex question, very, very complicated. We'll differentiate between a couple of things. There's, for example, what's written in the books about a man and a wife's souls. Written here in the book, 2 tablets of the covenant Shnei Luchos Bris, where it quotes the Holy Zohar as saying, the man and the woman's soul are the same soul. And they went through a process of separation, so that they can come to this world and meet in a seemingly random way, and they'll become one here. And also in the next world, his and her souls will be completely unified. Two souls that were one. So it's like a jigsaw puzzle that's cut.
That's very interesting.
So they can later be joined together. And they join together in this world so they can return to the original source, and they can continue together for eternity.
So it's possible that my suit or someone else's suit contains only a partial soul.
It's only a man and his wife. Two components that separate and then come together
Is
again.
it possible that a partial soul will descend into the world?
Now, this question is asked in the Sefer, in the book Orach Chaim, on the Torah portion Vayechi. Why does it relate in the first Parsha Bereshis that people lived 700, 800, 900 years
Yeah.
until the time of the flood, and then only lived afterwards 120 years, the maximum, after the flood?
Yeah.
The book explains as follows. At first, souls descended until they had served their entire term, until they had purified all their faults. So they needed 700, 800 years. Then God saw that humans had forgotten their
They
morality,
didn't correct it?
and the world
They made
was
it
filled
worse?
with crime, and they destroyed the whole world. Therefore, from then on, souls descended in little pieces, little soul cells, so that in case they get spoiled, they won't end up destroying everything. It's similar to a car is assembled in a factory, where all the components, the wheels, the engine, the radiator, are all constructed,
Separate and rule.
and then later put together. The Orach Chaim explains, every day a new spark of the soul descends.
To the same body? To the same...
Yes,
Interesting.
to the same body as the day before. Your soul today is not the same as it was yesterday. It's called a spark. That's why you say, Modeh ani lefonecha, in the morning. And at night you're depositing the soul. When you sleep, pieces of the soul are replaced, and a new piece is delivered that needs to be purified that day. If it's purified, it's taken away to prevent what happened before the flood. And if you didn't fix it, then that flawed part goes somewhere else.
So we're constantly changing.
We're changing, and that's why we feel different and live differently. That same flawed part that wasn't fixed could be postponed in this life, and then gets another chance. If it never gets fixed in this life, that piece is rejected, which means reincarnation.
Rejects.
Those pieces are you. You have to fix those parts of your own unique personality. They don't belong to anyone else. The Torah has different commandments for different kinds of people, male and female, Kohen, Levi, and different laws for different seasons. Farmers have different agricultural laws.
Yeah. In Eretz Yisrael.
The commandments are tools. They're not the final aim. Everything a person does in this world is for the purpose of reaching perfection. The verse says, in all your ways, know him, and he will straighten out your path. He'll straighten out your path. Let me ask you a simple question. A person lives 24 hours a day. Let's take even a religious person. Now, how many commandments does he carry out during that time? Most of the time, a person is in a state of so-called holding, parv, neither here nor there. And the point is, the person has a destination, and he's no matter where he is or what he's doing. He's a civilian, a soldier, a carpenter. The question is whether he's making his work faith, true, faithful. That's called completing the soul. Every soul thrown into a different point, and at each point he needs to know how to complete it. A soldier gets drafted. One day he's sent to basic training. After that, maybe they send him to an artillery course, and then maybe to a sniper's course. He wants to be a pilot, he needs to pass X course. He wants to be a Navy commando, he has to pass Y course, and so on. He has to pass through each course to get where he needs to go. Today he wants to be the commander-in-chief. He has to pass the right his way towards the well. Sits down, takes a piece of dry bread out, eats it, goes lie down to sleep on the side of the road, and just falls asleep. And the rich man returns on his horse. He looks around for the wallet. He can't find it. He notices the poor man lying on the ground and storms over to him, shakes the man awake, demands his wallet back. Where's my wallet? The poor man tries to claim his innocence. I didn't see anything. But the rich man angrily insists this is the place he dropped his wallet. No one else around. It's a lot of money. They argue back and forth. The rich man finally loses his temper. He beats up the poor man.
Slight physical pressure.
Finally, he's wounded, he's bleeding. The other one rides away without his wallet, leaving the poor man beaten up near the well.
And
the student returns to the Baal Shem Tov in the evening, says, what happened? I figured I'd meet some rabbi who would give me an explanation of the Holy Zohar. What happened? I went to this place. A rich man came on a horse. He dropped his wallet without knowing. Another person came and found the wallet and picked it up and left. Then the poor man came, lay down to take a nap. He barely managed to close his eyes. The first one came back and was beat him within half an inch of his life.
Beat him up.
So the Baal Shem Tov explained that these three men were together in a past life. The first man owed the second man money and refused to pay him back. He didn't want to pay him. In the Holy Zohar it says, the debt remains to the extent a person will have to come from a past life to repay what he owes. Not just the person in debt, but the person he owes the money to as well. So back to our story. The two went to trial, and the third man, who was the rabbi of their city, was also the presiding judge in their court case. He did a very sloppy job. He didn't investigate the case properly, and he ended up acquitting the first man who was guilty. All three men's souls were decreed to descend back into the world. The first one, who lost his money, actually returned it to the second man to whom he owed it. The first man lost it, the second one found it. Case closed. What about the third one, who was the real guilty party in this story for not judging the case properly? He was beaten, and therefore he received his punishment as well. Now you understand the meaning of the verse. What goes around, comes around. He had to come back to receive the punishment that was due him from a previous life. What goes around, comes around. Now you understand a person who is beaten, a person who gets a reward.
I heard about a fellow from Bnei Brak who grabbed two young guys and hurried them, and they didn't know what he wanted, so he yelled at the car at the corner of the street, loading up in the dark of the night, I forgive you, and the car loaded up the furniture and took off. The two young guys asked him, what do you need us for? He said, you're my witnesses. They're thieves, I don't care, they just took some old furniture from my house. But I should come back, reincarnation, because they stole from me? No thank you, I forgave them now.
Yes.
Time is short, and I still want to address one or two questions, with your permission. In the Torah, do we have examples of reincarnation in Jewish books and Jewish literature?
Yes, there are a lot of them. The Holy Ari in the book about reincarnation writes about what people were in past lives. He writes about the Amoraim, the Tanaim, and what they all were in past lives. The Holy Ari taught his best pupil, Rabbi Chaim Vital, about each and every reincarnation since the beginning of the world, who each one was and what they did. Another
question from our viewers that keeps recurring. If a soul is reincarnated in many suits and many bodies, which body will it be wearing in the resurrection? Do we have any information about that?
No, the answer is very simple, really. Which suit does someone who has a lot of suits in his closet wear? When he goes to a special occasion, the answer obviously is the best one. Similarly, the body through which he achieves the greatest spiritual repair, that's the one. That's the one he'll wear.
Excellent. There are those who equate things like seances and hypnosis and other phenomena in the world. Is there any advantage? We've heard many things on the show today and last time about things that are forbidden in Judaism. I understand that seances are forbidden according to Judaism.
Many things are prohibited, which means we're forbidden to do them. Doesn't mean that they don't exist.
The same Stevenson that we mentioned from American literature, who mentions many examples and reincarnation.
Yeah, we're forbidden to conduct seances. You know why? Because it aggravates the soul.
It harasses the soul.
The soul doesn't like it.
And here we will part, Rabbi. We have another meeting next week, and then on a topic many have asked about, a contemporary topic, and already I'm telling the audience that they can send in questions on education. People want, seances, mysticism, but we have burning issues. We're going to meet to discuss this. And again, I'll remind you that our phone number is on the screen. Our voicemail call, you initiate the contact and we'll get back to you. That's it for today.